Buonasera, signore. Non deve restare solo stasera.
You don't have to sit alone tonight.
Da quanto tempo non sentivo parole a casa può calmare il cuore.
Mi ricorda mia madre.
Sembra che il suo cuore sia più pesante del suo appetito.
Perché dice questo?
Lo diceva mio padre quando si portava il dolore da solo.
Oggi è l'anniversario della morte di mio padre.
L'ascolto.
He sat in the center of the most exclusive restaurant in Manhattan, looking like a statue carved out of ice and disdain. Lorenzo Moretti, the man who owned half of Europe's shipping lines. For 45 minutes, waiters had tried to impress him. Managers had tried to charm him. But Lorenzo hadn't spoken a single word. The silence was deafening. It was terrifying. Then, a struggling waitress named Evelyn made a mistake. Or at least, everyone thought it was a mistake. She didn't offer him the menu. She didn't apologize. She leaned in and whispered 5 words in a dialect only a ghost from his past should know. The billionaire didn't just speak. He shattered the world she knew. Evelyn thought she was just serving dinner. But she was about to be served a destiny filled with betrayal, bloodlines, and a billion-dollar secret. The crash of ceramic against tile echoed through the kitchen of Le Privé, Manhattan's most pretentious dining establishment. "You are clumsy, Evelyn! Worthless!" Marceline Thorne, the floor manager, hissed, his face turning a shade of purple that clashed with his cheap tie. "That was a vintage plate. It's coming out of your tips." Evelyn Vance didn't flinch. She just knelt, picking up the shards of white porcelain. She was 24, tired, and currently drowning in debt left behind by her mother's medical bills. She didn't have the luxury of pride. "I'm sorry, Marcelin." The floor was slick. "Sorry doesn't pay the overhead," Marceline sneered. He adjusted his cuff, looking toward the swinging double doors that led to the dining room. His expression shifted from anger to sheer panic. "He's here." The kitchen went silent. Even the head chef, a man who usually screamed if the risotto was 30 seconds late, stopped chopping. "Who?" Evelyn asked, dumping the shards into a bin. "Lorenzo Moretti," a sous chef whispered, looking terrified. "The CEO of Moretti Global. They say he bought a hotel chain last week, just because he didn't like the service at the front desk." Marceline turned to Evelyn, a cruel glint in his eye. "The VIP section. Table 1, go." Evelyn blinked. "Me? But Sarah handles the VIPs. I'm just overflow." Sarah is hyperventilating in the walk-in freezer because Moretti hasn't looked at her, hasn't ordered, and hasn't spoken a word in 20 minutes, Marceline snapped. "He's rejecting everything with silence. Go out there, pour the water, and if you mess this up, don't bother coming back tomorrow." Evelyn wiped her hands on her apron, took a deep breath, and pushed through the doors. The atmosphere in the dining room was heavy, like the air before a thunderstorm. At the center of it all sat Table 1. Lorenzo Moretti was terrifyingly handsome, in the way a storm front is beautiful right before it destroys your house. He wore a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Evelyn made in a year. His hair was dark, swept back, and his eyes were fixed on the empty wine. Glass in front of him. He didn't look up as she approached. Evelyn felt the eyes of the entire staff burning holes in her back. She approached the table, holding a crystal pitcher of chilled water. "Good evening, sir," she said, her voice steady despite her trembling hands. Silence. She poured the water. He didn't blink. "Would you like to see the wine list or perhaps start with an appetizer? The chef has prepared a truffle carpaccio that is—" Lorenzo lifted one hand. "Stop." He didn't speak. He just pointed a long finger at the glass of water she had just poured, then waved his hand dismissively. He wanted her gone. Evelyn felt a flash of irritation. She was broke, tired, and hungry, and this man was treating people like furniture. She turned to leave, but then she saw it. On his pinky finger, he wore a heavy signet ring. It wasn't gold, it was blackened silver, stamped with a crest, a wolf biting a sword. Evelyn froze. She knew that crest. She had seen it in the old dusty photo albums her grandmother kept hidden in the attic, the grandmother who refused to speak English when she was angry. Evelyn looked at Lorenzo. He was staring out the window, looking utterly alone and deeply bitter. Without thinking, the words slipped out of her mouth. Not in English, but in the obscure, lyrical dialect of the Sicilian coast, a dialect her grandmother used to sing to her. Il dolore che non parla, sussurra al cuore fino a spezzarlo. The grief that does not speak whispers to the o'erfraught heart and bids it break. The effect was instantaneous. Lorenzo Moretti didn't just look up. He snapped his head toward her with the speed of a predator. His eyes, previously dull and bored, were now blazing with a mixture of shock and fury. For the first time all night, the billionaire opened his mouth. "Repeat!" he commanded. His voice was deep, raspy, like gravel grinding against velvet. "Repeat what you just said." The entire restaurant seemed to gasp. Marcelin, watching from the shadows, looked like he was about to faint. I'm sorry, sir," Evelyn stammered, switching back to English. "It's just an old saying. My nonna used to say it when I was brooding." Lorenzo stood up. He was tall, towering over her. He ignored the stunned diners. He walked around the table, closing the distance between them until he was inches away. He smelled of expensive cologne and tobacco. "That dialect," he said, his eyes scanning her face as if searching for a map. "It is from the village of Corleone, specifically the Western Ridge. Nobody speaks that in New York. Nobody." "My grandmother was from there," Evelyn whispered, intimidated by his intensity. Lorenzo's gaze dropped to her name tag. "Evelyn," he read. Then he looked at her neck. A small, cheap silver chain hung there, holding a tiny locket she never opened. "Give me your hand," he demanded. "What?" "Give me your hand." Evelyn slowly extended her hand. Lorenzo didn't kiss it. He turned it over, looking at her palm, then at her wrist. He seemed to be looking for something specific. When he didn't find it, he let out a breath that sounded like disappointment. "You have the accent," he muttered to himself, "but not the mark." "Sir, I should get back to work," Evelyn said, pulling her hand away. "My manager is watching." Lorenzo looked over Evelyn's shoulder to where Marceline Thorne was cowering. Lorenzo reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a black card made of titanium. He dropped it onto the table with a heavy clink. "Manager!" Lorenzo barked. Marceline sprinted over, sweating profusely. "Yes, Mr. Moretti. I apologize for the waitress. She is new. I will have her removed immediately." "Shut up," Lorenzo said calmly. "Bring me the bill for the entire restaurant. Everyone currently eating. I am paying for everyone's meal." Everyone, sir?" "Yes. And then I am buying out this waitress's contract." Marceline blinked. "Excuse me?" Lorenzo turned his dark eyes back to Evelyn. "She's fired, because she is coming with me." "I am not going anywhere with you," Evelyn said, planting her feet firmly on the sidewalk outside Le Privé. It was raining now, a cold New York drizzle. A sleek black limousine was idling at the curb, its back door held open by a massive bodyguard who looked like he ate concrete for breakfast. Lorenzo Moretti stood under a large black umbrella, unbothered by the weather. "Evelyn, do not be difficult. You just lost your job. I saw your manager's face. Even if you go back in there, he will make your life hell because I caused a scene." "You caused a scene!" Evelyn shouted, clutching her thin cardigan around her. "You can't just buy people." "I didn't buy you. I hired you," Lorenzo corrected, his voice devoid of emotion. "Get in the car." For what? To be what? Lorenzo stepped closer, shielding her from the rain with his umbrella. The proximity was overwhelming. Up close, she saw the exhaustion etched into his features. He wasn't just arrogant. He was haunted. My translator, he lied. She knew it was a lie, but he said it smoothly. I have business dealings requiring nuance. That dialect you speak? It is rare. I need it. I'm a waitress, Mr. Moretti, not a corporate linguist. I will pay you $10,000 for tonight alone, he said. Evelyn choked on the air. $10,000. That would clear her mother's medical debt. It would pay the rent for 6 months. It would save her. She hesitated, looking at the warm interior of the limo, then back at the restaurant where she spent 12 hours a day being treated like garbage. Just tonight? She asked. Just tonight, Lorenzo promised. If you wish to leave afterward, my driver will take you to your door. Evelyn got in the car. As the door clicked shut, sealing out the noise of the city, the atmosphere shifted. The car smelled of leather and scotch. Lorenzo sat across from her, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquid. Drink, he said, sliding a glass to her. It will calm your nerves. Evelyn didn't touch it. Where are we going? To the Moretti estate in the Hamptons, he said. The Hamptons? That's 2 hours away. You said tonight? We will take the helicopter, he said, casually, as if suggesting they take a taxi. Evelyn sank back into the leather seat. She had made a deal with the devil. She watched him as he checked his phone. Why that dialect? She asked softly. Why did it matter so much? Lorenzo paused. He looked out the tinted window. My younger brother, Matteo, disappeared 15 years ago. He was taken from our villa in Sicily. The last thing he heard was a lullaby in that dialect. It was our nanny who took him. Evelyn felt a chill that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. I'm sorry. Don't be, Lorenzo snapped, his vulnerability vanishing instantly. We are going to meet my grandfather. He is dying, and he has become delirious. He only speaks the old tongue now. I need you to translate his final wishes. It sounded plausible, but Evelyn had a gut feeling that Lorenzo Moretti was leaving something out. They arrived at the heliport, and within minutes, they were soaring over the glittering skyline of Manhattan. Evelyn looked down, feeling small. What is your last name, Evelyn? Lorenzo asked over the headset. Vance, she said. My father was American. My mother was Italian. Rossi. Lorenzo stiffened visibly. He didn't say another word for the rest of the flight. When they landed at the estate, it wasn't a house, it was a fortress. High stone walls, iron gates, and armed security guards patrolling the perimeter with dogs. This wasn't a home for a dying old man. It was a bunker for a war. They were ushered into a massive library. The room was dimly lit, filled with books bound in leather that looked centuries old. In the center of the room sat a wheelchair, and in it, a man who looked like a withered version of Lorenzo. Nonno, Lorenzo said, his voice unusually gentle. I brought someone. The old man, Giovanni Moretti, lifted his head. His eyes were milky with cataracts, but his mind seemed sharp. He muttered something incomprehensible. Lorenzo looked at Evelyn. Translate. Evelyn stepped forward. The old man was speaking fast, his voice raspy. She listened carefully, her heart pounding. Il lupo è tornato. Il sangue non mente. Lei ha la chiave. Evelyn swallowed hard. She looked at Lorenzo. Well, Lorenzo demanded. What did he say? He said, Evelyn hesitated. He said, the wolf has returned. Blood does not lie. She has the key. Lorenzo's face went pale. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a gun, setting it on the desk. Evelyn screamed and backed away. I knew it, Lorenzo whispered, looking at her with a mix of hatred and awe. "You aren't just a waitress, are you, Evelyn Vance?" "I don't know what you're talking about," Evelyn cried. "Please, I just want to go home." "You can't go home," Lorenzo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl, "because you are wearing it." "Wearing what?" "The locket," Lorenzo pointed to her neck. "Open it." "It's rusted shut. It's never opened." Lorenzo crossed the room in 2 strides. He grabbed the locket from her neck, ignoring her protest. He didn't try to pry it open with his fingernails. Instead, he took the signet ring from his own finger, the wolf biting the sword, and pressed it into a small indentation on the back of her cheap silver locket. Click. The locket sprang open. Inside there was no picture. There was a tiny folded piece of microfilm and a microscopic engraving on the gold interior, property of the De Luca family. Lorenzo stared at it, then at her. "De Luca!" He spat the name like a curse. "You are the daughter of our greatest enemy, and you just walked right into the lion's den." Evelyn backed up until she hit the heavy oak door. It was locked. "I didn't know," she whispered. "I swear I didn't know." "It doesn't matter," Lorenzo said, picking up the gun again. But he didn't point it at her. He pointed it at the door. "Because my security just signaled that 3 SUVs filled with mercenaries just breached the gate. Your family is here to take you back, Evelyn, and they will kill everyone in this house to get that microfilm." The sound of automatic gunfire erupted from the front lawn. Lorenzo looked at her, his eyes wild. "If you want to live, you stay behind me. You are my prisoner now, Evelyn, or my leverage. Let's see which one keeps us alive longer." The library door shuddered as a heavy battering ram slammed against them from the outside. Wood splintered. Dust rained down from the ancient ceiling. Lorenzo didn't waste a second. He grabbed Evelyn's wrist, his grip like an iron shackle. "Move! Now!" "My grandmother!" Evelyn screamed, thinking of the only family she had left back in Queens. "If they know who I am—" "If they are here, they already know everything," Lorenzo growled, pulling her toward a bookshelf on the far wall. He reached for a leather-bound copy of Dante's Inferno and tilted it. The bookshelf groaned, clicking loudly before swinging inward to reveal a dark, narrow stone staircase. "Go!" he ordered, shoving her into the darkness. "What about your grandfather?" Evelyn hesitated, looking back at the old man in the wheelchair. Giovanni Moretti sat perfectly still, a strange, serene smile on his face amidst the chaos. He waved a frail hand at them. "Go." "He is safe," Lorenzo said, his voice tight. "This room is bulletproof reinforced steel disguised as wood. Once the panic button is hit, the windows seal. He will survive. We might not." Lorenzo stepped into the passage and hit a switch. The bookshelf slammed shut, just as the library doors burst open. The muffled sound of shouting men and heavy boots faded as they descended into the cool, damp air of the tunnel. "Where are we going?" Evelyn panted, struggling to keep up with Lorenzo's long strides in her worn-out waitress sneakers. "Underground garage, 1/2 mile north. It exits into the forest," Lorenzo said. He stopped abruptly at a steel door, punching a code into a keypad. He glanced at her, his eyes scanning her face in the dim emergency lighting. "You are trembling." "I'm terrified," Evelyn snapped, adrenaline making her bold. "Half an hour ago I was serving risotto. Now I'm in a secret tunnel with a billionaire who thinks I'm a mafia princess. Give me a break." Lorenzo stared at her for a beat, and for the first time, something flickered in his eyes. Not warmth, but respect. "Keep that anger. Fear makes you hesitate. Anger makes you survive." The door hissed open. They stepped into a concrete bunker filled with cars that looked more like spacecraft. There was a matte black Lamborghini, a vintage Jaguar, and a monstrous armored SUV. Lorenzo bypassed the sports cars and went straight for the SUV. "Get in the back. Keep your head down." As soon as the engine roared to life, the garage door began to lift. But they weren't fast enough. As the SUV peeled out onto the gravel service road, headlights blinded them. 2 black trucks blocked the path. Men in tactical gear raised assault rifles. "Get down!" Lorenzo roared. Evelyn threw herself onto the floorboard just as the windows shattered. The sound was deafening. Pop, 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 pop. Glass raining down like diamonds. Lorenzo didn't flinch. He slammed the accelerator, ramming the armored front of the SUV into the side of the blocking truck. Metal screeched against metal, sparks flying into the night. The impact spun the truck out of the way. Lorenzo gunned it, the SUV fishtailing on the wet leaves before gripping the pavement of the main road. "Are you hit?" Lorenzo shouted over the roar of the engine. I don't think so," Evelyn cried, checking herself for blood. She crawled up to the seat. "Who are they? Why are they shooting at us if they want me?" "They don't want you alive, Evelyn," Lorenzo said grimly, watching the rearview mirror. "The DeLuca family is split into 2 factions. One wants the heir, you, to lead. The other wants you dead, so the current boss, your uncle, stays in power. Welcome to the family reunion." Evelyn felt sick. "My mother. She never told me." "She was protecting you," Lorenzo said, swerving to avoid a deer, "or hiding her shame. The DeLucas are butchers. They killed my parents 20 years ago." The car went silent. The weight of his words filled the space between them. Evelyn looked at his profile, the sharp jawline, the intense focus. He wasn't just saving her. He was saving the daughter of his parents' murderers. "Why are you helping me?" she whispered. "If you hate them so much, why not just throw me out of the car?" Lorenzo's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror again. 3 sets of headlights were pursuing them, gaining fast. "Because," he said, shifting gears violently, "that microfilm in your locket is the only lead I have on my brother. And because—" He trailed off, his jaw tightening. "Because what?" "Because I don't kill civilians," he lied. "Hold on, I'm going to try something stupid." Lorenzo slammed on the brakes. The SUV skidded to a halt in the middle of a bridge. "Get out," he commanded. "What?" "Get out! Jump the rail. There is a river below." "Are you insane? Do you trust me?" He looked at her, his dark eyes blazing. "No." "Good. Trust gets you killed." Lorenzo grabbed her hand, kicked the door open, and dragged her out into the rain. The pursuing cars were seconds away. He pulled her to the edge of the bridge. Below, the dark water churned. "On 3, he said. "Lorenzo, I can't swim." "Then hold your breath." He didn't wait for 3. He wrapped his arm around her waist, pulled her close against his hard chest, and jumped. The wind rushed past her ears, followed by the shocking, freezing impact of the water. Evelyn woke up coughing water. Her lungs burned, and her body was shaking so violently her teeth clattered together. She was lying on a wooden floor. There was a fire crackling nearby. She pushed herself up, her vision blurry. She was in a cabin. It was rustic but expensive. Heavy timber beams, a bearskin rug, and a wall of windows looking out into a pitch-black forest. "You swallowed half the Hudson River," a voice said from the shadows. Lorenzo was standing by the fireplace. He had stripped off his ruined suit jacket and was wearing a white dress shirt, soaked through and clinging to his muscular frame. He held a glass of brandy. "Here," he said, walking over and crouching beside her. He held the glass to her lips. "Drink. It will warm the blood." Evelyn took a sip, coughing as the liquid burned her throat. "We're alive," she whispered in disbelief. "For now," Lorenzo said. He stood up and walked to a table where Evelyn's locket lay open under a bright lamp. He had a magnifying glass in his hand. "Did you find out what it is?" Evelyn asked, pulling a blanket around her shoulders. She felt exposed, vulnerable. Her waitress uniform was ruined, wet and muddy. "It is a bank account number," Lorenzo said, his voice devoid of emotion. "Zurich. And a cipher key. For money. No, for a vault." Lorenzo turned to face her. "The De Lucas are famous for their vaults. They keep blackmail material on every politician, judge and CEO in Europe. That is their real power. And you have the key to their kingdom around your neck." Evelyn stood up, her legs wobbly. "I don't want it. Take it. Take the key, take the money, I don't care. I just want my life back." Lorenzo laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "Your life is gone, Evelyn. The moment you opened your mouth in my restaurant, the old Evelyn died. You are a target now. If I let you go, you will be dead within the hour." "So what? I'm your prisoner?" "My guest," Lorenzo corrected, "until we figure out how to use this to destroy them." "Destroy them?" Evelyn stepped closer to him. "These are people I don't know. You talk about war and destruction. I'm worried about my rent. I'm worried about my cat. I'm not a soldier, Lorenzo." "You are a De Luca," Lorenzo shouted, losing his composure. He slammed his hand against the wall, making her jump. "It is in your blood. Treachery is in your DNA." "Stop saying that," Evelyn screamed back, tears welling in her eyes. "My mother was a nurse. She was kind and soft, and she sang me lullabies. She wasn't a monster." "Then why did she run?" Lorenzo challenged, stepping into her personal space. He loomed over her, his eyes searching hers. "Why did she flee Sicily 24 years ago? The same year my parents were killed." "I don't know. Liar! I don't know!" Evelyn sobbed, pushing against his chest. Lorenzo caught her wrists. His grip was strong, but not painful. He held her there, pinned against the invisible wall of his anger. But as he looked down at her wet hair plastered to her face, her wide, terrified hazel eyes, her trembling lips, the anger began to shift into something else. The silence in the cabin grew heavy. The fire popped. Lorenzo's gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. He was breathing hard. Evelyn's heart hammered against her ribs, but she didn't pull away. "You look like her," Lorenzo whispered, his voice rough. "My mother. You have her eyes. It is a cruel joke." "Lorenzo," Evelyn breathed. He released her wrists abruptly, as if he had been burned. He turned his back to her, running a hand through his wet hair. "There is a bathroom through that door," he said, his voice cold again. "There are dry clothes in the closet. My sister keeps some things here. They should fit." "Lorenzo, go," he commanded, "before I forget that you are the enemy." Evelyn fled to the bathroom. She stripped off her wet clothes and stepped into the hot shower, letting the water wash away the river mud. She cried silently, the tears mixing with the water. When she came out, dressed in a soft cashmere sweater and leggings she found, the cabin was quiet. Lorenzo was sitting in an armchair, staring at the fire. He had a laptop open on his knees. "I ran a trace on the account number," he said, without looking up. Evelyn sat on the rug, hugging her knees. "And?" "It was opened 25 years ago, by a woman named Isabella De Luca." "My mother," Evelyn whispered. "Her name was Isabella." "Isabella De Luca was the daughter of the Don," Lorenzo said. "She was betrothed to my uncle. It was supposed to be a peace treaty between our families, but she vanished the night before the wedding. The De Lucas blamed us. They said we killed her. That started the war that killed my parents." Evelyn gasped. "She ran away? Because she didn't want to marry?" "Apparently," Lorenzo looked at her. "She ran away to America, changed her name to Rossi, and had you." So, I'm legitimate? You are the rightful heir to the De Luca crime syndicate, Lorenzo said. And since your grandfather, the old Don, died 3 days ago, that makes you the Don. Evelyn laughed hysterically. Me? The Don? I can't even get Marceline to give me a Tuesday off. Lorenzo didn't smile. He closed the laptop. That is why the mercenaries are coming. Your uncle, Stefano, seized power when the old man died. But he knows you exist. As long as you are alive, his claim is weak. He sent the hit squad. So what do we do? Evelyn asked, her voice trembling. Lorenzo stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the dark forest. We stop running, he said. We go back to New York. We walk into the De Luca headquarters. And we claim your throne. You're crazy. No. Lorenzo turned to her, a dangerous smirk playing on his lips. I am a businessman, and I just realized I have the most valuable asset in the world. Me? Yes. You're going to pretend to be the ruthless mafia queen they fear. And I... He walked over to her, extending his hand. I am going to be your consigliere. We are going to take them down from the inside, and we are going to find my brother. Evelyn looked at his hand. It was a death sentence, but it was also her only chance. She took his hand. One condition, she said. Name it. You teach me. Don't throw me to the wolves. Teach me how to be one. Lorenzo's fingers tightened around hers. Deal. But be warned, Evelyn. When you dance with the devil, you don't get to pick the tune. Suddenly, the glass of the window behind Lorenzo shattered. A red laser dot appeared on Evelyn's chest. Down! Lorenzo tackled her to the ground, just as a sniper bullet tore through the space where she had been standing. They found us! Lorenzo cursed, rolling them behind the heavy oak sofa. Someone betrayed us. Only 3 people knew about this cabin. Who? Evelyn cried, covering her head. Me! My sister! And my head of security, Dante. Lorenzo pulled a pistol from under the sofa cushion. He checked the magazine. It seems, Lorenzo said, his eyes cold as ice, that Dante has just tendered his resignation. The cabin was a trap. The bullets tore through the wood like paper. Lorenzo kept Evelyn's head down, his body a shield against the splintering debris. The kitchen! Lorenzo hissed into her ear. Gas line! We are going to blow the back door. We'll blow ourselves up! Evelyn screamed over the noise of shattering glass. Better to burn than to be executed. Lorenzo grabbed a heavy bottle of vodka from the shelf, ripped a strip of cloth from the curtains, and stuffed it into the neck. A Molotov cocktail. When I throw this, you run for the back exit. Do not look back. Lorenzo stood up, exposing himself to the window. A bullet grazed his shoulder, tearing through the white shirt, blossoming red. He didn't even grunt. He hurled the flaming bottle toward the front entryway where the gunmen were breaching. Whoosh! The fire caught the spilled alcohol and the old timber instantly. A wall of flame separated them from the attackers. Go! Lorenzo shoved her. Evelyn scrambled through the back door, tumbling out into the freezing night air. The snow was falling now, covering the forest floor. She gasped, the cold air burning her lungs. Lorenzo was right behind her, clutching his bleeding shoulder. Into the trees, he commanded. They ran. Branches whipped Evelyn's face, leaving stinging scratches. She could hear shouting behind them, orders being barked in Italian. They were being hunted like animals. Wait. Lorenzo stopped suddenly, pulling her behind a massive oak tree. He was breathing heavily, sweat mixing with the blood on his shirt. Dante knows my protocols. He knows I would head for the secondary extraction point at the ridge. We can't go there. Then where do we go? Evelyn whispered, her teeth chattering. We go where he doesn't expect. We circle back, to his car. It was insane, but it was the only option. They moved silently through the underbrush, circling the burning cabin. The orange glow of the fire illuminated the scene. 3 men in tactical gear were scanning the tree line, and there, standing by a black SUV, was Dante. He was a tall man, with a scar running down his cheek, a man Lorenzo had trusted with his life for 10 years. He was calmly smoking a cigarette, watching the house burn. "Stay here," Lorenzo whispered to Evelyn. "If I die, take the keys from his body and drive." "Lorenzo, no." Lorenzo stepped out of the shadows. He didn't have a gun. He had lost it in the scramble. He walked toward Dante with empty hands. "Dante!" Lorenzo's voice boomed. The security chief spun around, hand going to his holster, but he paused when he saw Lorenzo standing there, unarmed and bleeding. "Boss," Dante said, a flicker of regret in his eyes. "You should have burned in the house. It would have been cleaner." "Why?" Lorenzo asked, walking closer. The other mercenaries turned their weapons on him. "I gave you everything. A life. A purpose." "Stefano De Luca gave me my sister back," Dante said quietly. "He kidnapped her 3 days ago. He said if I didn't deliver the girl and you, he would send her back to me in pieces." Lorenzo stopped. The betrayal made sense now. It wasn't greed. It was leverage. "Let the girl go, Dante," Lorenzo said. "She is innocent." "Nobody is innocent in our world, Lorenzo. You taught me that." Dante raised his gun, aiming it at Lorenzo's chest. "I'm sorry." Crack. A gunshot rang out. But Lorenzo didn't fall. Dante stumbled forward, a look of shock on his face. He dropped his gun and clutched the back of his knee. Evelyn stood 20 feet away, holding a discarded pistol she had found in the snow. Dropped by one of the mercenaries during the breach, she was shaking, holding the gun with 2 hands. But her aim had been true. She had shot Dante in the leg. "Run!" Evelyn screamed. Lorenzo didn't waste the distraction. He lunged at Dante, tackling him to the icy ground. The other mercenaries opened fire, but they were afraid of hitting their own leader. Lorenzo, fueled by adrenaline and rage, knocked Dante unconscious with a brutal strike to the temple. He grabbed Dante's keys and his radio. "Get in the car!" Lorenzo roared, dragging Evelyn toward the SUV. They dived inside just as the mercenaries realized their boss was down. Bullets pinged against the armored chassis. Lorenzo fumbled with the keys, his bloody hand slipping. "Drive!" Evelyn yelled. The engine roared to life. Lorenzo stomped on the gas, and the heavy SUV plowed through the snow, knocking aside a mercenary who tried to block the path. They careened down the mountain road, leaving the burning cabin and the traitor behind. Once they were on the highway, speeding back toward the city lights, the adrenaline crash hit them. Lorenzo slumped against the steering wheel, his face pale. The blood loss was getting to him. "You shot him," Lorenzo murmured, glancing at her. "You shot him." "I missed," Evelyn said, her voice hollow. "I was aiming for his head." Lorenzo looked at her, and a dark, terrifying smile touched his lips. "Maybe you are a De Luca after all." Lorenzo's penthouse in Manhattan was a fortress in the sky. It occupied the top 3 floors of the Moretti Tower, accessible only by a private elevator that required a retinal scan. They collapsed into the foyer. The white marble floors were immediately stained with mud and Lorenzo's blood. "Sophia!" Lorenzo called out, his voice weak. A young woman appeared from the living room. She was stunning, wearing a silk robe with the same dark eyes as Lorenzo. This was his sister. She took one look at the blood, the mud, and the traumatized waitress, and she didn't scream. She went into action. "Medical kit, kitchen table, now," Sophia ordered. 20 minutes later, Lorenzo was stitched up and sitting at the kitchen island, drinking a double espresso. Evelyn was showered, wearing one of Sophia's oversized hoodies, staring blankly at the city skyline through the floor-to-ceiling windows. "So," Sophia said, crossing her arms, "this is her? The waitress who started World War III? She is Isabella De Luca's daughter," Lorenzo said. "She is the heir." Sophia's eyes widened. She looked at Evelyn with new interest. "Well, that complicates the dinner plans." "What dinner plans?" Evelyn asked, turning around. "Stefano De Luca is hosting a memorial gala for the old Don tonight," Lorenzo said, reading a notification on his phone. "It is a power move. He is going to announce his succession to the other 5 families. If he does that, and they accept him, you are as good as dead. He will have the full power of the syndicate behind him." "Then we have to stop him," Evelyn said. "We?" Lorenzo raised an eyebrow. "Evelyn, you are safe here. I can get you a plane to Brazil. New identity. You can disappear." "I'm tired of running," Evelyn said, walking back to the table. She looked down at the microfilm on the table. "They hunted my mother. They hunted me. If I run to Brazil, they will find me. The only way to be safe is to be the one holding the leash." Lorenzo looked at his sister. Sophia smirked. "I like her." "We need to walk into that gala," Evelyn said, her voice gaining strength. "We need to show them that I exist, that Stefano is a usurper." "You can't just walk in there," Lorenzo said. "You look like... well, you look like a waitress. No offense. These men are sharks. They smell fear. They smell weakness. If you walk in there looking like a victim, they will eat you alive." "Then change me," Evelyn challenged him. "You said you hired me to translate. Well, translate me into someone they fear." Lorenzo stood up. He walked over to her, circling her slowly. He wasn't looking at her body. He was looking at her posture. "Stand up straight," he commanded. She straightened. "Chin up. Higher. You are not looking for tips anymore. You are looking down on them." He stopped in front of her. "It is not about the dress, Evelyn. It is about the eyes. When you look at Stefano, you cannot show hate. Hate is emotional. Hate is weak. You must show indifference. Like he is an insect, you are deciding whether to crush or ignore." Evelyn took a deep breath, channeling every customer who had ever been rude to her, every manager who had yelled at her, and the cold fury of almost dying in the snow. She looked at Lorenzo. Her face went blank, her eyes cold. "Like this?" she asked. Lorenzo stared at her for a moment, stunned. The transformation was chilling. "Sophia," Lorenzo said, not breaking eye contact with Evelyn. "Get the dress, the black one, and the diamonds, the Moretti diamonds." "The family jewels?" Sophia gasped. "Lorenzo, those are for your future wife." "She is playing the part of a queen," Lorenzo said softly. "She needs the crown." 3 hours later, a Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up to the curb of the Plaza Hotel. The paparazzi were swarming, flashes blinding in the night. The De Luca Memorial Gala was the event of the underworld season, disguised as a charity ball. The valet opened the door. Lorenzo stepped out first, looking devastating in a tuxedo, his arm in a black sling, which only made him look more dangerous. He reached a hand inside. Evelyn Vance stepped out. She was unrecognizable. She wore a floor-length gown of black velvet that hugged every curve, with a slit that went up to her thigh. On her neck sat the Moretti diamond necklace, a piece of jewelry worth more than the hotel itself. Her hair was slicked back, her makeup sharp and severe. But it was her walk that stopped the cameras. She didn't walk fast. She didn't smile. She took Lorenzo's arm and glided up the red carpet with the terrifying grace of a panther. "Who is that?" a photographer shouted. "Is that a model?" "No," another whispered. "Look at the eyes. That's a killer." They reached the ballroom doors. 2 massive security guards blocked their path. They worked for Stefano. Invitation? The guard grunted. Lorenzo didn't speak. He looked at Evelyn. Evelyn turned her gaze to the guard. She didn't blink. She reached into her clutch and pulled out not a ticket, but the heavy, blackened silver signet ring Lorenzo had used to open her locket. She held it up. "Tell Stefano," she said, her voice low and smooth as dark honey, "that his niece has come to pay her respects." The guard's face went pale. He keyed his radio, whispering frantically. A moment later, the doors swung open. The ballroom was silent. 300 of the most dangerous criminals, politicians, and business tycoons in New York turned to look. At the head of the room, on a raised stage, stood Stefano De Luca. He was a bull of a man, holding a glass of champagne, mid-toast. When he saw Evelyn, the glass slipped from his fingers and shattered on the floor. Evelyn didn't stop. She walked through the center of the room, the crowd parting for her like the Red Sea. Lorenzo walked a step behind her, her shadow, her protector. She walked right up to the stage. She didn't climb the stairs. She stood at the bottom, forcing Stefano to look down, making him look awkward and small. "Uncle," Evelyn said. Her voice was amplified by the silence of the room. "You started the party without me." Stefano recovered his wits. His face turned red. "Who is this imposter? Security! Remove this trash!" "Careful, Stefano," Lorenzo spoke up, his voice carrying effortlessly. "You don't want to disrespect the head of the family." "She is a nobody," Stefano shouted, pointing a shaking finger. "A waitress. I am Evelyn De Luca," she announced, turning to face the crowd. She held up the microfilm chip in her fingers. "And I hold the keys to the vault, the blackmail, the accounts, the treaties. I have it all." A collective gasp went through the room. The keys were the source of the De Luca power. Without them, Stefano was just a thug in a suit. "If you kill me," Evelyn said, looking back at Stefano, "the information is released to the FBI, Interpol, and the press. I have a dead man's switch active." It was a bluff, a massive lie. But she delivered it with such conviction that even Lorenzo looked impressed. Stefano looked at his captains. He looked at the other dons in the room. He saw his power evaporating. "What do you want?" Stefano hissed, leaning down. Evelyn smiled. It was the smile of the wolf on Lorenzo's ring. "I want my seat at the table," she said. "And I want to know where you buried Matteo Moretti." Stefano's eyes darted to Lorenzo. "Matteo? You think he is dead?" Stefano began to laugh. It was a cruel, wheezing sound. "You fools," Stefano sneered. "I didn't kill Matteo Moretti. I raised him." He pointed to the back of the room. "Matteo, come say hello to your brother." The crowd parted again. A man walked forward. He looked like Lorenzo, but sharper, crueler. He was dressed in the De Luca colors. It was the sniper from the woods. Lorenzo froze. The color drained from his face. The brother he had spent 15 years searching for, the brother he had mourned, was the man who had tried to kill him 3 hours ago. Matteo stopped in front of them. He looked at Lorenzo with zero recognition, only cold malice. "Hello, brother," Lorenzo whispered. "I have no brother," Matteo said. He pulled a gun on Lorenzo. "I am a De Luca, and you are trespassing." The ballroom held its breath. The air crackled with the kind of tension that usually precedes a massacre. Matteo, the boy who had been stolen, the brother who had been mourned, stood with a steady hand, aiming a customized Beretta directly at Lorenzo's heart. "Matteo!" Lorenzo said, his voice cracking. He didn't look at the gun. He looked at his brother's eyes. They were cold, dead, brainwashed by 15 years of De Luca poison. "Put the gun down. Look at me. I am Lorenzo, your brother." "My father is Stefano De Luca," Matteo recited, his voice monotone, robotic. "You are an enemy of the family." "He stole you," Lorenzo shouted, stepping forward despite the weapon. "He took you from the garden. You were 5 years old. You were playing with a toy soldier. A red soldier." Matteo's eye twitched. A flicker of pain crossed his face. "Silence him!" Stefano roared from the stage, sweat beading on his forehead. "Shoot him, Matteo, now, or I will put you back in the hole." The threat made Matteo flinch. His finger tightened on the trigger. Evelyn saw it happening in slow motion. Lorenzo was going to die. He was going to die trying to reach a brother who wasn't there anymore. She looked at the microfilm in her hand. It was useless against a bullet. She looked at the guards. They were loyal to the paycheck. She had only one weapon left, the same weapon that had started this entire night. The dialect. Evelyn stepped in front of Lorenzo. "Move, woman!" Matteo hissed, aiming at her head. Evelyn didn't move. She looked deep into Matteo's confused, angry eyes. She took a breath and began to sing. It wasn't a song of war. It was the lullaby her grandmother had taught her. The same lullaby the nanny had sung to Matteo before he was taken. The dialect of the western ridge of Corleone. "Dormi, piccolo lupo, la notte è tua amica." "Sleep, little wolf, the night is your friend." The effect was violent. Matteo gasped as if he had been physically struck. He staggered back, grabbing his head with his free hand. "Stop it!" Stefano screamed. "Shoot her! Shoot the witch!" Evelyn raised her voice, singing louder, her voice echoing off the vaulted ceiling, haunting and sweet. "La spada è d'argento, ma il cuore è d'oro." The sword is silver, but the heart is gold. Matteo dropped to his knees. The gun shook in his hand. The conditioning, the years of torture and lies were cracking under the weight of a core memory, the sound of home. "Matteo!" Lorenzo rushed forward, dropping to his knees beside his brother, ignoring the danger. "It's me! It's Enzo!" Matteo looked up. The dead look was gone, replaced by the terrified eyes of a 5-year-old boy trapped in a man's body. "Enzo," he whispered. "No!" Stefano De Luca jumped off the stage, his face twisted in fury. He pulled a gold-plated revolver from his tuxedo jacket. "If you won't kill him, I'll kill you all." Stefano raised the gun, aiming at Evelyn. Bang! The shot rang out, deafening in the enclosed space. Evelyn squeezed her eyes shut, waiting for the pain. But it never came. She opened her eyes. Stefano De Luca stood frozen, a look of shock on his face. A red stain was spreading across his white shirt. He looked down at his chest, then up at the shooter. Matteo was standing. He had fired. "My name," Matteo said, his voice trembling but loud, "is Matteo Moretti." Stefano collapsed backward, crashing into the orchestra pit. The tyrant was dead. Chaos erupted. Stefano's guards raised their weapons, unsure of what to do. The other mafia families began to move, sensing a power vacuum. "Stop!" Evelyn's voice cut through the noise like a whip. She snatched the microphone from the stand and climbed onto the stage, stepping over the spot where Stefano had stood. She looked like an avenging angel in her black velvet and diamonds. "Stefano De Luca is dead," she announced. "The succession is resolved." She held up the signet ring, the De Luca crest. "I am the blood heir. I hold the keys to the vault. The accounts are mine. The blackmail is mine. The secrets are mine." She turned her gaze to Stefano's guards, who were currently aiming at Lorenzo and Matteo. "Anyone who fires a weapon in this room," Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a deadly calm, "will have their entire financial history, their home addresses, and their darkest crimes sent to the FBI within 10 seconds. I have the switch." The guards hesitated. They looked at the dead body of their boss. They looked at the fierce woman on the stage. Slowly, one by one, They lowered their guns. Evelyn looked out at the sea of faces, the most powerful criminals in the world. "The war between the DeLucas and the Morettis ends tonight," she declared. "If you want peace, stay and drink. If you want war, come and take it." Nobody moved to challenge her. The Don of the Genovese family raised his glass. "To the new Don," he grumbled. Evelyn let out a breath she felt like she had been holding for a lifetime. She looked down at the floor. Lorenzo was holding Matteo, hugging him tightly. Lorenzo looked up at her, and the look of pride and awe on his face was worth more than all the money in the vault. 3 months later, the sun was setting over the Amalfi coast, casting a golden glow over the terrace of the private villa. Evelyn sat at a wrought-iron table, reviewing a stack of documents. She wasn't running a criminal empire. Not really. She was dismantling it, piece by piece, turning the DeLuca assets into legitimate businesses. It was dangerous work, but she was good at it. "You are working too hard," a voice said. Lorenzo walked onto the terrace, carrying 2 glasses of wine. He looked younger, the weight of the world lifted from his shoulders. His arm was fully healed. "Someone has to keep the wolves at bay," Evelyn smiled, taking the glass. "Matteo is doing well," Lorenzo said, leaning against the railing. "The therapy is helping. He remembers more every day. He asked about you." "He's a good kid," Evelyn said softly. "He just had a bad teacher." Lorenzo walked behind her chair. He placed his hands on her shoulders, his thumbs rubbing away the tension in her neck. "You know," he murmured, leaning down so his lips brushed her ear. "I never did pay you." Evelyn turned in her chair to face him. "Excuse me?" "That night at the restaurant, I promised you $10,000 for your services as a translator. I never wrote the check." Evelyn laughed. "I think saving my life and making me a billionaire heiress covers the tab, Lorenzo." "I don't like debt," Lorenzo said, his eyes darkening with intent. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small velvet box. He knelt on one knee. "I don't want you as my employee. I don't want you as my business partner. I don't even want you as the Don." He opened the box. Inside wasn't a signet ring of war. It was a single, perfect diamond, set in platinum. "I want the waitress," Lorenzo said. "The one who wasn't afraid to speak the truth to a man who had forgotten how to listen. Evelyn, will you marry me?" Evelyn looked at the ring, then at the man who had dragged her into the darkness only to help her find her own light. "I have one condition," she whispered, a playful smile touching her lips. "Name it." "You have to ask me in Italian. The dialect." Lorenzo smiled. He took her hand and kissed her knuckles. "Ti amo, anima mia. Sposami." "Si," Evelyn whispered. Lorenzo stood and pulled her into a kiss that tasted of wine, ocean air, and a future that belonged entirely to them, the waitress and the billionaire. They had started with silence, but they ended with a promise that would last forever. And that, my friends, is how a simple glass of water and a few words in a forgotten dialect took Evelyn Vance from cleaning tables to ruling an empire. I bet you didn't see that twist with the brother coming, did you? This story just proves that sometimes the quietest people have the loudest destinies. I really hope you enjoyed this journey of romance, betrayal, and high-stakes mafia drama. If you did, please do me a huge favor. Smash that like button right now. It helps the channel so much. And if you want more stories like this, where billionaire CEOs meet their match in the most unexpected ways, hit subscribe and ring the notification bell so you never miss an upload. What would you have done if you were Evelyn? Would you have saved Stefano or let him fall? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.